Golf may seem like an endless puzzle, but mastering its basics is easier than you think. The question is, are you ready to turn confusion into confidence and join the ranks of those who love this amazing game? Golf may be one of the most frustrating, challenging, and patience-testing games ever created, and we realize this might push many beginners away. We're here to tell you that it's really not that difficult, and with a little bit of learning, you can master the game that so many people love. If you already have some golf knowledge, great. If you don't, that's okay too, because we're going to cover everything you'll ever need to know. For simplicity, we divided our video into 4 sections: the basics, scoring, penalties and hazards, and etiquette. So, without further ado, let's dive right into the basics, and welcome back to the Golf Vault. Golf has many moving parts, so where do you start? Well, as some of you may have guessed, we're going to start on hole 1. One obvious but often overlooked rule is to play the holes in succession, starting from hole 1. Now, sometimes golf courses will make you start on hole 10, the back 9 as we call it, and that's okay too. Just make sure wherever you start, you play all holes in order. Golf courses won't like it if you skip ahead or go back to play holes if it's not in order, so keep this in mind, it could save you some trouble. Tee boxes, what are they? These mounds on the ground are actually the place where you start every hole, and it's important that your first shot of every hole is from a tee box. Now, on these tee boxes are distinguishing features called the tee markers, which are very important. Follow along closely, because this is vital to the rulebook. You must hit your first shot from inside and behind the tee markers. If you're playing casually with some friends, this rule might not seem too important for you, but remember that golf courses put them there for a reason, and etiquette is everything on the golf course. Tee boxes seem like a lot to learn about, but they're not that bad once you play the first time. Now, I almost forgot one of the most important things about tee boxes, which is the color. Unlike what you may think, there's not one, but actually 5 or 6 tee boxes on a regular golf course for every hole. They are color-coded, and whichever color you play from in the beginning, make sure you stick with it throughout the entire round. But which color should you play? As a benchmark, red is for ladies and beginners, orange is for junior golfers, yellow is for seniors, white is for the average golfer, blue is for advanced golfers, and finally, black is for the professionals. Use your judgment when deciding which tee box to play. And it's not that big of a deal if you pick incorrectly. It may just make it harder on you because each tee box has a different distance from the hole. We talked about the basic rules to start playing. Now let's talk about how scoring works. Scorecards for golf look confusing. We've all thought this at one point or another. The scoring, however, is actually very simple. For every hole, you write down how many shots, or strokes as we call it took you to get from the tee box into the hole. If you took 7 shots, you would write down a 7 under hole 1 on the scorecard. It's that simple. The rest of the scorecard is for you to compare with the course par, and some features we'll disregard for now, because they are for more advanced golfers. I mentioned comparing your score with par. Everybody always talks about making a par, or shooting par in golf. But many of you are probably wondering, what is par? Essentially, par is just the standard score for the course for you to try and beat. Each hole has its own par. Adding them all up gives a cumulative par for the course. Holes either have a par 3, 4 or 5. And cumulative pars for a course can range from 70, 72 on average, depending on the course layout. Let's use an example. You start on the first hole and it says par 3. This means you should aim to get into the hole in 3 shots or less. If you get it in 3 shots, you scored par for that hole. What if you don't get par? Well, nothing really happens. You just write down your score and move on. Par is just the standard to aim for. There are names other than par for your score, depending on what you scored. These names have been given to the appropriate strokes over or under par to distinguish how you played on any hole. So, if I told you I got a bogey on hole 3, regardless of whether it was par 3, 4 or 5, I shot 1 over par. Scoring is now simple. Write your score for each hole on the card, and by the end of the round, tally them up to see your total score. You can compare this with your friends and against the par for the course to see how well you did. This is called stroke play in golf, and it's the original and most well-known way to play the game. Of course, like any sport, there are variations on how to play. But the simplest and most common way to play golf is stroke play, and we'll keep our discussion at that for today. Section 3. Penalties and hazards. Doesn't sound like such a fun section, does it? But regardless of wanting to skip this section, it's super important for you to understand so that you can score your game correctly. Golf is the same as any game. There's obstacles to try and limit your performance. These obstacles come in the form of hazards, bunkers, and out-of-bounds areas. Let's start with bunkers. Bunkers are super simple to explain. They are there to slow you and your ball down. There are huge holes filled with sand, and it's impossible to miss them. If you end up in a bunker, don't sweat, because you don't incur any extra stroke. They're just super difficult to hit out of. Most importantly, your club cannot touch the sand in any circumstances, unless you're hitting the ball. This means absolutely no practice swings and makes bunker shots even harder than they already are. Once you get the hang of them though, bunkers really aren't that bad, and any avid golfer will tell you they're easy to get the hang of. Hazards. They could be a ditch, they could be a pond, or they could be some other form of water. Red or yellow stakes, and 2, it will cost you 1 stroke or shot. Wherever you think your ball crossed into the hazard, from there you will drop a ball and add an extra stroke to your score for that hole. For example, I hit my second shot into the water. Where my ball crossed into the water, I would drop a new ball, on the grass of course. And then from there, I would hit what is now my 4th shot, because of the 1-stroke penalty I had to incur. And that's all there is to the hazards, but let's expect to avoid them. Trust me, you'll be better off. Similar to hazards, out-of-bounds areas also cost you 1-stroke penalty, and the same rules apply, except you must re-hit from your original spot. A white stake or line marks these out-of-bounds areas. Say you hit it from the tee box and it enters the woods. This would constitute a ball out of bounds, and now you would re-hit from the tee box. This time hitting your 3rd shot because you incurred the 1-stroke penalty plus your 1st shot. See, it's not that complicated, but it sure is frustrating if you find yourself out of bounds. Golf is all about etiquette. The sport revolves around it, and upholding the specific rules and procedures put in place is important if you want to keep playing. There are a couple of things they don't teach you right away about etiquette that are very important, especially if you're playing with experienced players, so let's go over them. For one, follow the dress code at your specific course. Many courses will not even let you play if you do not adhere to their dress code. Most courses have their dress codes listed on their website or by phone if no website is available. But be sure to find out if there's an active dress code to save yourself some embarrassment. Second, if you find yourself hitting a bunker shot, ensure that when you're done, you rake the area you stepped in and hit from. This is super important because if another golfer finds themselves in the bunker, they would not like it if they had to hit their ball in a hole from your footsteps. It's just another little thing to keep in mind when playing. And don't worry, the golf course will have rakes at every bunker for you. Golf is a game of patience, consistency, and silence. If other players are hitting, it is respectful to be silent, quiet, and to stay still if you're in their view. Anything you could do to distract them when they are trying to hit would be considered disrespectful, so keep this in mind. If you give your opponents respect when they are hitting, they will reciprocate it to you. On the greens, it's super important to repair your divot. Well, you may ask what a divot is. If you hit a shot and your ball lands directly on the green, many times it will create a small hole, called a divot. It's super important to take either a tee or a sharp object to fix the grass on the green where your divot is, because who wants to putt over a bunch of holes? Another thing to be aware of on the greens is if your ball is in the way of another player. In this instance, a common practice would be to mark where it was with a coin or something flat. This way, if the player behind you were putting, they would not have to worry about hitting your ball. And of course, always remember to only use your putter on the green. Everyone wants to be safe on the golf course. After all, golf balls hurt. With so many golf balls flying around, Please be aware of your surroundings and where your golf ball is going at all times, because no one wants to get hit. If your ball does go towards someone, make sure you yell 4 very loudly. When golfers hear 4, they tend to brace for an impact or hide for cover. This gives them the chance to avoid getting hit and is the most important rule to keeping everyone safe on the golf course. In golf, it's respectful to play at an appropriate pace. This doesn't mean you have to rush, but if there are people behind you, keep a respectful pace. And if you are going very slow and holding them up, it's a nice thing to let them pass you on the next hole. That's all you need to start playing, it's that easy. There are other rules, yes, but why make the game more advanced in the beginning if you don't need to? If you want to learn more about golf, check out our other videos. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and comment on what you want to see next on the Golf Vault.